Death can be understood as a concept we use to mark a real transformation in the world, the end of a being's organized, self-directed existence. The matter that made up that being remains, but the unified life form, the thing with goals, functions, and a trajectory, no longer exists. What disappears is not the atoms, but the organization that made those atoms a living creature. In this sense, death is conceptual, but it is not imaginary. It names a structural change that happens whether or not anyone observes it. Death is the loss of a mode of being. A living organism is more than its physical parts. It is a system that maintains itself, repairs itself, pursues ends, and generates its own future. When that organization collapses, the being ceases. The physical material persists, but the entity does not. This is why death cannot be reduced to just atoms rearranging. What ends is the higher-order pattern that made those atoms a life, a concept that tracks a real event. The word death is a human category, but the event it refers to is not dependent on human interpretation. The cessation of self-organization, the collapse of biological unity, and the end of a life's trajectory all occur regardless of whether anyone names them. In this way, death is like species or planet, a conceptual tool that refers to something real and mind-independent. A stance-independent fact. Death is a fact about the world that does not depend on beliefs, attitudes, or cultural framing. When a creature dies in an empty forest, the world is still changed. Its future actions will never occur. Its causal influence ends. Its narrative trajectory is cut off. Its ecological role ceases. These are objective absences, real changes in the unfolding of events. Death therefore stands as a fact that is not reducible to physics alone, yet not dependent on human perspective. Why this matters? Understanding death this way shows how a concept can be both human-constructed and anchored in reality. It captures a transformation that is not invented by us, but recognized by us. This structure, conceptual yet mind-independent, irreducible yet real, is the same structure needed for many other objective categories, including moral ones. Why moral facts can exist as stance-independent truths, even though agents can ignore, deny, or fail to be moved by them. The core idea is that conceptual truths about the world can be both real and reason-giving. Just like physical facts, moral facts as real features of the world. We can understand moral facts the same way we understand many other facts, as conceptual truths that track real structures in the world, independent of whether anyone acknowledges them. A person can deny a fact, misunderstand it, or refuse to act on it, but that does not erase its reality or its significance. A wall does not stop being a wall because someone insists it isn't there. You can run into it whether you believe in it or not. Even if someone is strong enough to break through it, the wall still had an ontology. It was still something they had to overcome. Moral facts can work the same way. Why denial doesn't erase a fact? People often say, someone might not regard that moral fact as a fact. That is true, but irrelevant. Disregard is not disproof. Ignorance does not dissolve reality. A fact does not depend on your attitude toward it. This is true in a large set of domains. You can deny gravity, but you still fall. You can deny hunger, but your body still needs food. You can deny a moral truth, but the reasons it provides remain. The existence of a fact is not contingent on your willingness to be guided by it. Internal motivations show how facts can be reason-giving. When someone says, you ought to eat if you're hungry, that statement is grounded in a biological fact about human nature. Hunger is motivating because of what we are. Yet even here, a person can ignore the motivation. Someone can starve to death surrounded by food. The point is not that hunger forces you to act. The point is that hunger gives you a reason grounded in your nature as a living organism. Moral facts can be understood the same way. They are reason-giving features of the world that apply to us, because of what we are, reasoning creatures with instincts, habits, and functions. Reason makes some facts universally relevant. Humans are not just biological organisms, we are rational agents. Because of this, we encounter a special class of facts. Facts about what supports or undermines agency. Facts about what beings like us require to function. Facts about what we owe to creatures capable of reasons, feelings, and futures. These are not optional. They are not invented. They are not dependent on personal taste. They are universal constraints on beings who can think, deliberate, and act. From these constraints arise oughts and ought-nots, normative truths that can be ignored, but not erased. Ignoring a reason does not eliminate the reason. A person can disregard a moral reason just as they can disregard hunger, pain, or danger. But the reason remains. The fact remains. The consequence remains. To ignore a moral fact is simply to act against the structure of the world, not to change it. The picture that emerges. Moral facts are conceptual, but they track real features of the world. They are stance-independent. They do not depend on anyone's approval. They are reason-giving. They apply to us because of what we are. They can be ignored but not nullified. They function like other facts that guide action, biological, physical, or logical. This gives morality a firm footing. Not supernatural, not subjective, but grounded in the nature of agency itself. How rational agents navigate conflicting motivations without abandoning the idea of objective oughts. Conflicting motivations don't erase objective oughts. Human beings often face situations where two genuine reasons pull in different directions. Hunger gives you a biological reason to eat. A desire to be lean gives you a long-term evaluative reason to restrict, or time your eating. Both reasons are real, and both arise from facts about your nature. The conflict between them doesn't make either reason disappear. It simply forces you to weigh them. This is the first key point. An ought does not vanish because another ought appears beside it. Rational life is full of overlapping, sometimes competing, reason-giving facts. How rational agents decide between competing reasons. The ability to do otherwise doesn't tell you what you ought to do. What matters is how your reasons fit together. When two motivations conflict, you naturally ask, which action better preserves the commitments I already hold? Which action avoids contradicting my stated goals? Which action maintains the integrity of my agency over time? This is not subjective preference. It is a form of objective practical reasoning grounded in the structure of agency itself. You are not choosing between arbitrary impulses. You are choosing between reasons that have different weights and different implications for your future coherence. Why contradictions matter for agency? Contradictions are not just logical errors. They are failures of agency. If you claim to value leanness but repeatedly act in ways that undermine that value, you create a fracture between your commitments, your actions, and your retrospective self-assessment. This fracture weakens your ability to trust your own reasoning. It undermines your capacity to form stable intentions. Avoiding contradiction is therefore not optional. It is a requirement for maintaining yourself as a reasoning creature. It is an epistemic good built into the nature of thought, the walls of reason and the effort required to act. Consider a metaphor of walls to capture the structure. Hunger is one wall. Long-term goals are another. Both exert pressure. Some walls are thin and easy to push through. Others are thick and require persistence. The fact that you can choose between them does not make them less real. It simply means you must navigate them with effort. The existence of these walls is objective. The difficulty of overcoming them is objective. The conflict between them is objective. What varies is the strength of your volition and the clarity of your commitments. Irreversible actions reveal the true weight of reasons. Some choices are trivial because they are reversible. Choosing chocolate cake over vanilla is light, because nothing permanent is at stake. But if that choice were eternal, the weight of the reason would increase. Irreversible actions close off future possibilities, and this makes the reasons behind them heavier. This shows that the weight of a reason can depend not only on the motivation, but on the structure of the consequences. Some actions cannot be undone, and this gives them a special normative gravity. The unified picture. Objective oughts grounded in our nature. Putting these pieces together gives a coherent account of how objective oughts function. We have motivations grounded in biological, psychological, and rational facts. These motivations generate reasons. Reasons can conflict without canceling each other. Contradictions between commitments and actions damage our agency. The action we ought to take is the one that best preserves coherence across time. This process is objective because it is grounded in the nature of reasoning itself. The result is a picture of agency where oughts are not arbitrary commands, are subjective preferences. They are facts about how beings like us must act if we are to remain coherent, functional, and rational. There are facts about reasons that genuinely motivate us, and that these facts shape what we objectively ought to do even when our motivations conflict. Reasons have a factual basis in our nature. Human beings don't invent their reasons out of thin air. Many of the things that motivate us rise from facts about what we are. Hunger is a biological fact. Long-term goals are psychological and evaluative facts. Rational commitments are structural facts about how agency works. Each of these facts generates a reason that exerts pressure on what we do. A reason is motivating not because we choose to feel it, but because it is anchored in our nature. Hunger motivates because of how our bodies function. Commitments motivate because of how our agency is organized. Rational coherence motivates because contradiction undermines our ability to think and act. These are not subjective whims. They are features of the world and of ourselves. Conflicting motivations don't erase the reality of reasons. When you're hungry, you have a reason to eat. When you want to be leaner, you have a reason to restrict eating. Both reasons are real. Both arise from facts. Both exert motivational force. The conflict between them does not make either reason disappear. It simply means you are facing two genuine pressures grounded in different aspects of your nature. This is why internal conflict feels real. Your agency is being pulled by two truths at once. How rational agents decide what they ought to do. The ability to choose otherwise doesn't tell you what you ought to do. What matters is how your reasons fit together. Rational agents evaluate their reasons by asking, which action aligns with my commitments? Which action avoids contradiction between what I say I value and what I do? Which action preserves the integrity of my agency over time? This is not subjective preference. It is objective reasoning about how to maintain coherence as a thinking being. Why contradictions matter for agency. Contradictions are not just logical mistakes. They are failures of agency. If you claim to value leanness but repeatedly act against that value, you create a fracture between your commitments, your actions, and your self-understanding. This fracture weakens your ability to form stable intentions and undermines your trust in your own reasoning. Avoiding contradiction is therefore an epistemic requirement for being a functioning rational creature. Why some agents remain unmoved by reason-giving facts. A reason-giving fact has two components. Normative force accounts in favor of an action. Motivational uptake, the agent's architecture is able to feel that force and let it shape behavior. When someone is unmotivated by reason-giving facts, the problem is almost always in the second component. The fact is still a fact. The reason is still a reason, but the agent's motivational architecture fails to register it. Three major failure modes explain this. Perceptual failure, they literally don't see the fact as relevant. Moral blindness, emotional numbness, self-deception. Structural failure, their motivational system is dominated by competing drives, fear, status, addiction, ideology that drown out the reason. Conceptual failure, they lack the conceptual framework that makes the reason intelligible, e.g., someone who cannot grasp long-term consequences. In all three cases, the reason is real, but the agent's architecture is not shaped to interact with it. For most agents, a strong reason is like a solid wall. You can ignore it, but you will feel the collision. You can push through it, but it takes effort and leaves marks. But for some agents, the wall is not in their dimensional space. They don't collide with it because their motivational architecture doesn't intersect the plane where that wall exists. They behave as if the wall is transparent or non-existent. Reason exists in a certain dimensional manifold. Agents differ in how many of those dimensions their motivational architecture occupies. The overall picture. Motivations arise from facts about our biological, psychological, and rational nature. These facts generate reasons that exert real pressure on our agency. Conflicting reasons do not cancel each other, they must be weighed. Contradictions undermine our ability to reason and act coherently. The action we ought to take is the one that best preserves coherence across time. This makes reasons, and the motivations they generate, objective features of our lives, not subjective inventions. Why a psychopath's coherent desires do not count as correctly apprehending the relevant facts, and why this does not collapse morality into selfish coherence maintenance. Why being coherent with yourself is not enough. If morality were nothing more than avoiding contradictions within your own desires, then anyone who could keep their preferences internally consistent, including a psychopath, would count as fully rational and fully moral. But that picture is incomplete. Coherence is necessary for agency, but it is not sufficient for correctly grasping the facts that matter. A person can be perfectly consistent within a distorted or impoverished set of motivations. What matters is whether they are tracking the full range of salient facts that a functioning human agent is capable of recognizing. This is where the psychopath fails. The difference between internal coherence and full epistemic attunement. A psychopath may be able to articulate their desires clearly, avoid contradictions within their own goals, reason instrumentally to achieve what they want, but they lack something deeper, epistemic attunement to morally salient facts. These include facts such as other people's suffering, the reality of other minds, the weight of irreversible harm, the significance of agency in others, the constraints that shared rationality imposes. A psychopath's agency is compromised because they fail to register entire categories of reasons that normally functioning agents can perceive. Their motivational system is missing inputs that are part of the human form of life. This is not a moralistic judgment, it is a factual claim about impaired reasoning. Why this counts as a failure of fact apprehension. Just as someone with color blindness fails to detect certain wavelengths of light, a psychopath fails to detect certain moral wavelengths, facts about harm, empathy, reciprocity, and the standing of others as agents. The key point is, a reason can be real even if someone is psychologically incapable of feeling its force. A psychopath's inability to be moved by certain reasons does not mean those reasons do not exist. It means their epistemic machinery is damaged. This is why their coherence does not vindicate their worldview. They are coherent within a truncated map of reality. Why moral reasons are not just selfish coherence maintenance. The framework shows that coherence matters because contradictions undermine agency, but coherence alone does not determine which reasons exist. Reasons are grounded in facts about human nature and agency. Some agents can fail to detect those facts. So the moral agent is not selfish in the ordinary sense. They are maintaining coherence and correctly tracking the full landscape of reasons and responding to facts about other agents, not just themselves. A psychopath can do the first, but not the second or third. Why the tuned-in agent has greater epistemic capacity. Someone who is attuned to the morally salient facts has a richer perceptual field, a more complete grasp of the reasons that exist, a more accurate model of other minds, a deeper understanding of the consequences of actions, a more stable and coherent long-term agency. This is why their judgments carry more normative weight. They are not more moral because they feel more. They are more rational because they perceive more. A psychopath's reasoning is narrower, flatter, and missing key dimensions. Their coherence is like a well-organized room, with half the furniture missing. The overall picture. Moral reasons are real features of the world. Some agents can fail to detect them. Coherence is necessary for agency, but not enough for morality. Psychopathy involves a deficit in recognizing morally salient facts. A fully functioning agent has a broader epistemic capacity, and therefore a richer set of motivating reasons. How experience itself becomes a source of objective, reason-giving facts. Even though experience is subjective in its form, what we are building is a bridge between first-person experience, empathic or simulated experience, and stance-independent moral facts. Experiential reasons as part of rational agency. Human reasoning does not operate only on abstract propositions. It also imports experiential content, the felt texture of hunger, pain, joy, fear, loss, or harm. These experiences give us reasons because they reveal something about the world and about the beings who inhabit it. Two forms of experiential access matter. First-hand experience, I feel pain, so I know what pain is. Second-hand experiential projection, I can imagine or empathically simulate what pain would be like for you. Both forms generate epistemic access to morally relevant facts. Why experiential reasons are not merely subjective. It's tempting to say that because experience is subjective, the reasons it generates are subjective too. But that's not quite right. The form of experience is subjective, but the facts it reveals are stance-independent. For example, pain is felt subjectively, but the fact that pain is bad for the creature experiencing it is not subjective. Fear is felt subjectively, but the fact that fear signals danger or vulnerability is not subjective. Suffering is felt subjectively, but the fact that suffering undermines agency and well-being is not subjective. So experiential reasons are irreducible facts about subjectivity. They are grounded in what it is like to be a creature with a mind, not in anyone's opinion. Why some agents grasp these facts better than others. Some people have a richer capacity to simulate others' experiences, project themselves into another's point of view, understand the significance of harm, appreciate the weight of vulnerability, and integrate these insights into their reasoning. This is not sentimentality, it is epistemic capacity. A person with strong empathic and reflective abilities has more data, more access to morally salient facts, and a more complete map of the experiential landscape. They are, in a literal sense, better informed. Why the psychopath fails, even if they are internally coherent. A psychopath may be able to reason coherently within their own desires, but they lack access to entire categories of experiential facts. They do not register others' suffering as significant. They cannot simulate another's point of view. They do not perceive harm as a reason. They cannot integrate experiential facts into their reasoning. Their agency is therefore epistemically compromised. They are coherent within a narrowed field of reasons, but they are blind to the full set of facts that a normally functioning agent can apprehend. This is why their coherence does not vindicate their worldview. They are coherent inside a defective map of reality. The key philosophical point. Subjective experience generates objective, stance-independent facts about what matters for creatures like us. This means, experiential reasons are real. They are not optional. They are not invented. And they can be apprehended with greater or lesser accuracy depending on one's capacities. A person with richer experiential attunement has greater epistemic access to the moral landscape. A person with impaired attunement, like a psychopath, has less access, even if they can articulate their desires coherently. The emerging picture. Experience is subjective in form, but reveals objective facts. Empathy and projection extend our experiential access beyond ourselves. These experiential facts generate genuine reasons. Some agents can fail to detect these reasons due to impaired capacities. Moral understanding depends on the breadth and accuracy of experiential attunement. The causal force of morality, what makes you ought do X or you ought not do Y real rather than invented, is to show how moral demands arise from the structure of agency itself. Experiential reasons, coherence, epistemic attunement, and the nature of rational beings. 1. Moral force begins with the kind of beings we are. Human beings are not blank slates. We are biological organisms with needs and vulnerabilities. Experiential subjects who feel pain, joy, fear, and harm. Rational agents who form commitments, evaluate reasons, and avoid contradictions. Social creatures whose agency depends on others' agency. These features are not optional. They are facts about our nature, and from these facts arise reasons, pressures on what we should or should not do. 2. Experiential facts generate real reasons. Experience is subjective in form, but it reveals objective truths. Pain is bad for the creature experiencing it. Fear signals danger and vulnerability. Suffering undermines agency. Well-being enables reasoning and action. These are not opinions. They are irreducible facts about subjectivity. A being who can feel harm has reasons grounded in that harm. A being who can understand others' harm has reasons grounded in that understanding. This is why empathy and projection matter. They expand our epistemic access to experiential facts. 3. Rational structure adds another layer of moral force. Reasoning creatures must avoid contradiction to preserve their agency. Contradictions fracture commitments, identity, long-term planning, trust in one's own reasoning. So one source of moral force is coherence. You ought not act in ways that contradict your own commitments, values, or understanding of the world. But coherence alone is not enough. A psychopath can be internally consistent, while missing entire categories of reasons. 4. Moral force requires full attunement to the salient facts. A fully functioning agent perceives their own experiential reasons, others' experiential reasons, the structural importance of agency, the consequences of harm, the irreversibility of certain actions, the interdependence of rational beings. A psychopath may be coherent, but they are epistemically blind to many of these facts. Their motivational system is missing inputs that are part of the human form of life. So the moral force of a reason depends on its grounding in real features of agency and the agent's capacity to apprehend those features. 5. The causal force of morality, how oughts arise. When you combine experiential facts, rational coherence, agency preservation, empathy and projection, the reality of other minds, the consequences of actions, the irreversibility of harm, you get a picture where moral oughts are not commands or preferences. They are the pressures exerted by the real structure of agency and experience. A moral ought is the action that best preserves agency, yours and others, avoids contradiction, respects the experiential reality of harm, acknowledges the standing of other agents, maintains coherence across time, aligns with the full set of reasons available to a rational being. These pressures are causal in the sense that they shape what a rational agent can endorse without undermining themselves. 6. Why this is not subjective or invented. Even though experience is subjective, the facts it reveals are stance independent. Pain's negative valence is intrinsic, not dependent on caring. Pain is functionally negative because it signals tissue damage or threat. It demands protective action. It narrows attention toward the source. It generates avoidance learning. These features are built into the architecture of sentient systems. They don't depend on whether the agent likes pain, wants pain, or identifies with pain. Even if someone says I enjoy pain, the enjoyment is never of the pain signal itself. It is always of something around it. Why people sometimes seek pain. When someone seeks pain, the reasons fall into a few stable categories. Endorphin release. The body's opioid system produces relief, euphoria, or calm after the pain. Contrast effects. Pain makes other sensations feel more vivid or meaningful. Escape from other pains, emotional pain, numbness, dissociation, or psychic overload. Identity, ritual, or meaning. The pain is instrumental to a valued narrative. Control. Choosing pain can feel like reclaiming agency from uncontrollable suffering. None of these make the pain itself positive. They make the total package positive because the pain is instrumental to something else. Much like risk-seeking behaviors. Harm undermines agency whether or not someone admits it. Contradictions destroy reasoning whether or not someone notices. Other minds exist whether or not someone empathizes. Moral force arises from these facts. It is not created by desire. It is discovered through reasoning and experience. 7. The unified picture. The causal force of morality comes from what we are, experiential, rational, vulnerable, social, what experience reveals, harm, well-being, agency, what reason requires, coherence, non-contradiction, what agency depends on, respect for other agents, what consequences impose, irreversibility, loss, damage. From these, oughts and ought-nots emerge as objective constraints on how beings, like us, must act if we are to remain coherent, functional, and attuned to reality. If someone claims to understand a motivating reason, but still be unmotivated, showing no corresponding physiological shift, then they are not actually simulating the motivation, they are merely giving a verbal report. That absence of embodied response is evidence that the motivation itself is missing. Their claim becomes a kind of performative contradiction. They assert access to a motivating fact while failing to register it. In doing so, they fail to apprehend experiential facts through simulation, facts that are themselves intrinsically motivating. Why a physical shift matters. Schachter, Singer's two-factor theory says emotions arise from 1. Physiological arousal plus 2. Cognitive interpretation. If a person can simulate another's motivational state, then the representation should trigger some bodily change, even if mild. The change should be directionally appropriate. Fear, tension, guilt, sinking stomach, compassion, warmth, or heaviness. The person should be able to notice and report that shift. Without this, the simulation is purely verbal. This gives you an objective, testable marker of motivational access. A 4-part assessment, including physiological salience. 1. Imagery capacity. Can the person form and manipulate mental images? Picture an apple. Change its color. Rotate it. This tests basic representational bandwidth. 2. Affective recall with bodily markers. Can they re-enter a past motivational state and feel the body shift? Recall a moment of fear. What happened in your chest, breathing, or muscles? Recall a moment of guilt or pride. Did your stomach drop? Did your posture change? We're looking for somatic markers, not just narrative memory. 3. Resonance with fiction, art, or music. Can mediated experiences produce felt motivational salience? Has a movie or song ever moved you physically? Tightness, chills, heaviness, warmth? Did it feel like something in you shifted, even briefly? This tests whether meaning can be embodied, not just understood. 4. Projection into unexperienced cases with bodily response. Can they simulate an unfamiliar motivational state and show a physiological echo? Imagine a parent choosing between their safety and their child's. What do you feel in your body as you imagine that conflict? Does loyalty, fear, or love show up as tension, pressure, or urgency? If they can describe the scenario but nothing shifts in their body, they are not accessing the motivational architecture, only the propositional content. What the physical criterion adds. The physical state requirement gives you objectivity. Bodily shifts are observable, reportable, and directionally predictable. Discrimination. It separates verbal intelligence from motivational access. Depth. It ensures the person is not merely thinking about the reason, but feeling its force. Normative credibility. Someone who cannot embody a reason cannot reliably judge its weight in others. What emerges from all of this is a picture of morality that is neither mystical nor invented, but rooted in the same kind of reality that makes death a real transformation, rather than a mere label. Our experiences reveal facts. Our reasoning organizes them. Our agency depends on responding to them. To ignore these facts is not liberation but blindness. To acknowledge them is not submission but clarity. And in that clarity, we find the shape of the lives we are capable of living, and the responsibilities that follow from being the kinds of creatures who can understand them. Here are some thinkers' perspective invoked through this in this declaration. Metaphysical foundations, organization, death, agency. These principles are already classical. Organization over matter, Aristotle, form, soul as organizing principle, later revived by Hans Jonas and contemporary systems theorists. Concepts that track real structures, Putnam and Boyd, natural kinds, John Dupre, real patterns, David Lewis, reference magnetism, stance-independent facts, Moore, non-natural moral facts, Scanlon, reasons independent of desire, Parfit, objectivism about reasons. Death as loss of organization maps directly onto Aristotle's holomorphism and Jonas's organismic unity. 2. Normativity from agency, coherence, contradiction, oughts. These principles are deeply rooted in constitutivist and Kantian traditions. Agency preservation, Christine Korsgaard. Constitutive norms of agency, Bellman, self-constitution. Non-contradiction as agency failure, Kant. Practical contradiction, Korsgaard, reflective endorsement. Reasons grounded in what we are, Philippa Foot. Natural goodness, Rosalind Hursthouse. Virtuous functional excellence, Michael Thompson. Life form judgments. Irreversibility and normative weight, Derek Parfit. Future-oriented reasons, irreversibility of harm. 3. Experiential reasons, pain, valence, empathy. These principles have strong philosophical and scientific precedent. Pain has intrinsic negative valence, Bentham, Mill, Sidgwick. Hedonic valence as objective, plus modern affective neuroscience, Friston, Barrett. Experience reveals objective facts, Thomas Nagel. Subjective character is epistemic access, Martha Nussbaum. Capabilities grounded in vulnerability. Empathy is epistemic access, Adam Smith. Sympathy is moral perception, Edith Stein. Empathy is direct access to others' experience. Claim that experience is subjective in form, but reveals objective facts is classic phenomenology plus moral sentimentalism. 4. Motivational architecture, reasons, uptake, blindness. These principles are well established in moral psychology and metethics. Reasons exist even when not felt, Scanlon. Reasons independent of motivation, Parfit. Object given versus state given reasons. Motivational uptake failure, Bernard Williams. Internal versus external reasons, Jesse Prince. Emotional deficits, Sean Nichols. Psychopathy is moral blindness. Psychopathy is epistemic deficit. Hume. Lack of sentiment equals lack of moral perception. Modern moral psychology. Blair. Haight. Dimensional wall metaphor is a vivid restatement of Williams's internal reasons model plus Humean moral perception. 5. Social agency and interdependence. These principles are grounded in social philosophy. Agency depends on others. Agency. Hegel. Mutual recognition. Brandom. Normative statuses. Margaret Gilbert. Joint commitment. Respect for other minds is structural. Kant. Humanity formula. Scanlon. What we owe to each other. Darwall. Second-person standpoint. Claim that harming others undermines your own agency is a modernized version of Hegelian mutual recognition. 6. Rational structure and coherence. These principles are classical. Coherence is constitutive of rationality. Kant, Korsgaard, Broom. Normativity of rational requirements. Reasons must fit together. Parfit. Wide value-based reasons. Scanlon. Weighing reasons. Conflicts don't cancel. Ross. Prima facie duties. W.D. Ross's pluralism is almost this conflict without cancellation. Framework's treatment of conflicting motivations is essentially Rossian pluralism plus Kantian coherence. 7. Moral realism without metaphysical excess. Realism aligns with Cornell realism. Boyd, Brink. Moral facts is naturalistic, but irreducible. Parfit's non-metaphysical realism. Moral truths as normative facts not dependent on attitudes. Scanlonian reasons. Realism reasons as stance-independent normative truths. The view is a synthesis of constitutivism plus experiential realism plus reasons fundamentalism. Moral reasons are real because they rise from the structure of beings who can feel, think, and act. If we were robots with no feelings, moral facts would still exist in the abstract, but we would have muted access to them. We would be colorblind to the very dimensions where moral reasons live. This is why emotions are not the opposite of reason. They are the medium through which certain reasons become intelligible. This can be represented in some moral theories. Nihilism as a failure of experiential attunement. Nihilism often reflects a reduced capacity to feel experiential reasons, the emotional, embodied signals that normally give life its texture of meaning. When someone says nothing matters, they are often reporting a muted emotional landscape, a lack of physiological resonance with goals or values, difficulty feeling the pull of reasons. This is why nihilism can feel like a flattened world, rather than a purely intellectual conclusion.